here we go. So you already mentioned it. The problem with the active shooter and the response for it is time and math. It's that simple. It's time and math. The active shooter is going to start in a crowded place. So it's going to be very easy for him to go from his first victim to his second victim to his third victim. A good planning factor I found in research is he's going to shoot somebody roughly a new person every 3 to 5 seconds in the first minute, every 6 to 8 seconds, a new person shot in the second minute. He'll shoot a new person every 10 to 12 seconds in the third minute. His shoot rate's going to slow down as people take evasive measures and run away. So that first couple of minutes is going to be by far the worst. So this timeline shows the problem. In minutes from when the first shot is fired, how long we let him shoot unopposed determines how many people will have shot. So the longer we let him shoot, the more victims. I like to think of it the other way. The more quickly we stop him, the fewer victims we'll have. So I like talking about the fewer victims options. Mathematically, the only way to have a good expectation of a low victim count, a single digit victim count, is to stop him in the first 30 seconds. It's not a guarantee, but it's got a very high success rate. Mm-hmm. We have to stop him in the first 30 seconds. There's no way to get a cop who's not standing right there when it starts to get a cop there within 30 seconds. So the cop can't be the answer to this. Only the people there, the intended victims, can stop it in the first 30 seconds. So it's not important who stops him. I don't care if a cop stops him, a student stops him, a teacher stops him, a principal stops him. I care about how quickly we stop him. There's a lot of myths out there that keep us from doing the right thing. One is that this active shooter threat is a law enforcement problem to solve. And that's why we keep getting a high victim count, because no matter how brave and well-equipped cops are, it just takes them too long to get there. Cops can almost never get there quick enough. So a lot of our focus has been on how do we train cops better? How do we notify cops quicker and get them there faster? That's never going to get us a single-digit victim count. We have to start focusing on other things. People think that Parkland and Uvalde, most of the people shot there were because of bad police response, and that's not true. It's due to bad school plans, the passive hunker down and wait. There was 24 people shot before the SRO at Parkland ever got to the building. So the fact that he wasn't aggressive once he got to the building wouldn't have any effect on the fact that there were double-digit 24 people shot. Uvalde, yeah, the cops did not do well after they got in the building, but the shooter had already shot the vast majority of his people before the cops got in the building and started making the mistakes. Lockdown drills are seen nationwide as the best practice to the active shooter, and that's ridiculous. The Parkland shooter shot 18 of his 24 victims on the first floor by standing in the hallway and shooting through the classroom doors. He never entered a classroom. So this thing about locking the doors and staying in your locked classroom protecting us is an absolute myth. And how to lock down drills protect you in the cafeteria or the playground or the media centers. Why do we use them then if they're not good? Well, because they're easy to drill and they work extremely well every day the shooter doesn't show up. But they don't work well on the days that the shooter does show up. And then we spend a lot of effort on hardening the building. Well, middle and high school active shooter attacks, the shooter is almost always a student of that school. So he's already in the building. So hardening the outside of the building, making it harder to get into, is only going to have the negative effect of delaying cops and EMS. So hardening is not necessarily the answer, and it might actually cause a problem because it might delay cops and EMS. Armed schools have been horribly failing at the active shooter for 4 decades. There's just some examples up there. Most schools in America have one of two options, one of two plans. One is call 911 and wait, let him shoot us until the cops get here. Or a slight variation is we have an SRO somewhere on campus and we'll also call 911. People think if we have an SRO on campus, we're safe. The active shooter in a middle and a high school is not going to start his attack close to the SRO. In Columbine, it took the cop 4 to 5 minutes, the SRO on campus, 4 to 5 minutes to get to the active shooter attack. So just having a cop somewhere on the campus, there's too many buildings to cover, too many wings and buildings to cover. Schools fail because they rely on the country's default plan of call 911 and wait, and that gives us a high victim count. So we have to opt out of the country's default plan and make our own plan of we, the school, we are going to have this stopped. We are going to immediately counterattack and have this attack stop before the first cop or ambulance gets here. I think this ought to be our goal for school active shooter attacks, a single digit victim count in any future attack. How can we get that? I only know of one possible mathematical way, and that's to immediately counterattack. We counterattack and stop him in the first 30 seconds. How can we do that successfully? There's two ways to do it, with a gun and without a gun. They can both work, but the armed option works far better than the unarmed option. If we're going to try to protect our students and staff, there's all kinds of tools we can use to fight the active shooter. We need to pick the best, most effective tool, and that's the gun. There are successful unarmed people who have stopped active shooters, but it's not nearly as successful as those with guns. And that's it, John.